Everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter what time zone you're in. Welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe.
I'm Sunny.
Recently, I was scrolling through my phone until I was honestly about to have a breakdown. The screen is just full of these gurus in suits or holding wine glasses telling me in this cold tone, you need to be strong, you need to be unmanipulable, you need to increase your market value. I feel like I'm not living life right now. I'm participating in a global personality arms race.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is what we call toxic self-help. This kind of content is, always a bestseller on Amazon or YouTube in the US. It's packaged to look like wisdom, but the underlying logic is just full of toxic individualism. They've essentially forcibly dismantled what should be a connection between people into a merger and acquisition deal between assets.
Right. They tell men, you have to be an alpha, and tell women you have to be a queen. And it ends up that when people are dating, they're basically running data analytics in their heads.
Yeah.
Oh, he replied 5 minutes late. Is he giving me negative social feedback, negging me? Should I immediately increase my scarcity? Oh my God, are we dating or trading futures?
Seriously. And today, we're going to debunk this toxic chicken soup. We're going to dismantle why these suggestions that supposedly make you empowered actually push you further away from genuine respect and boundaries, because this isn't a gender war. This is an intellectual exploration about reclaiming real human emotion.
Exactly. So today's title, We Were Told to Work on Ourselves, so why are we more alone than ever?
Subheadline, The Loneliness Paradox of Modern Self-Empowerment.
All right, so to all our amazing Sip and Talkers out there, grab your coffee, settle in, and get comfortable. We are completely stripping this digital ecosystem down to the studs today. But let me push back on this whole arms race idea right out of the gate.
Oh, go for it.
If a lifestyle coach tells me to hit the gym, build my financial independence, and stop letting every minor rejection derail my week, isn't that just objectively solid advice?
Right.
At what specific point does healthy self-improvement mutate into this militarized defense strategy you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that is the perfect distinction to make right there. Because the actions themselves, going to the gym, learning to manage your finances, those are entirely healthy.
Right, obviously.
The mutation happens entirely in the underlying intent. Are you optimizing your physical health and your career because you intrinsically value those things? Or, are you aggressively stacking capital so you hold all the leverage in a future relationship?
Ah, I see. It's about leverage.
Exactly. The arms race logic is fundamentally driven by this deeply rooted fear of being hurt. You're sold this narrative that the modern dating market is a zero-sum battlefield.
Wow, yeah. A zero-sum game.
Right. Therefore, to survive, you need to constantly add weapons to your arsenal. You have to cultivate this unshakable, stone-cold stoicism so absolutely nothing faces you. You become, according to the internet gurus, unmanipulatable.
Unmanipulatable.
Right.
Right. It's essentially playing aggressive defense before the game even starts.
Yeah.
But if we follow that logic to its natural conclusion, if I spend all my time optimizing my stats and building this impenetrable emotional armor, I just become a hedgehog. Right.
A hedgehog?
Yeah. I'm completely covered in spikes. Sure, nobody can attack my soft spots, but absolutely nobody can get close to me either.
Wow. You've just hit on the core tragedy of this entire phenomenon. The hedgehog dilemma.
The hedgehog dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exposing the soft belly is precisely where you get hurt, but biologically and psychologically, it is the only place where true human connection can actually happen.
That makes so much sense.
If two heavily armored hedgehogs try to hug, it's not a romance, it's just a prickly disaster. This arms race creates a societal dynamic where everyone is absolutely terrified of showing any baseline human need. Because needing companionship is framed by these influencers as a critical weakness in your operating system.
So if two hedgehogs can't, actually be vulnerable with one another, how are they measuring the success of their interactions?
We measure the ROI.
Oh, right. Return on investment. If you completely strip away empathy, what else is left to evaluate?
Exactly. You adopt a pure trader mentality. When you can no longer feel your way through a relationship, you try to manage it like a spreadsheet.
Basically doing performance reviews on your dates.
Basically. You start quantifying your self-worth based on arbitrary algorithmic metrics. And human affection transforms into a transactional calculation. You invest a specific amount of attention, and you expect an immediate proportional dividend of validation in return.
Wait. I need to map out this stock market metaphor a bit further, because if my affection is a volatile stock portfolio and I'm aggressively tracking how much value I hold in this dynamic social market, what happens when there's a market crash?
A market crash.
Yeah. Like, let's say I go on a few dates, I think my value is incredibly high, and then I get ghosted. Does my entire internal economy just, like, completely collapse?
Okay, before we go any further down this rabbit hole, I need to insert a very quick disclaimer.
Oh, right. The legal stuff.
Yeah. Anything we say today about trading futures, ROI, or stock portfolios is strictly a metaphor. I am not a financial advisor, and your dating life is definitely not regulated by the SEC.
Thank goodness for that. I mean, the paperwork would just be an absolute nightmare.
It would be terrible.
Yeah.
But to address your point about the market crash, that is exactly the inherent vulnerability of this toxic framework. Knowing your intrinsic worth is foundational to a healthy mind.
Right.
The catastrophic mutation happens when you externalize that worth. When your value is entirely dependent on market conditions, meaning how someone else responds to your presence.
Oh, I see.
If you invest your entire psychological net worth into a single speculative romantic prospect, you are going to stare at that ticker all day long. If they leave you on read for 4 hours and your self-esteem plummets by 30 points, you don't actually know your worth.
You're just day trading your own self-esteem based on a stranger's texting habits.
Exactly.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. You aren't building a relationship. You are just performing high-frequency trading on your own nervous system.
Yep.
Which honestly brings up a really critical question. If we are treating our social lives like ruthless hedge fund managers, we obviously need a risk management strategy to prevent that internal market crash.
Naturally.
And I feel like this is exactly where the internet's absolute favorite buzzword comes into play: boundaries.
Ah, yes. The self-help industrial complex loves to weaponize the concept of boundaries.
They really do.
But we need to look at the actual mechanism of what they are teaching. They are not teaching you how to build a psychological fence. They are teaching you how to configure a network firewall.
Oh, I love that distinction. Let's break down the architectural difference between a fence and a firewall in this context.
Sure. So in the physical world, a real fence, or a real boundary in psychology, is designed to protect the longevity and health of the property inside. It clearly defines where I end and where you begin.
Right.
But crucially, a fence has a gate. You have the agency to open that gate to let enriching things in and close it to keep toxic things out. It facilitates healthy, controlled interaction.
So it's permeable when it needs to be.
Exactly. A firewall, on the other hand, operates on a completely different premise. A firewall just drops all incoming traffic that doesn't meet an impossibly strict set of protocols.
So when these gurus say, oh, if someone disrespects you once, cut them off, block them, never invest energy into them again, they aren't teaching you how to navigate conflict.
No, not at all.
They are teaching emotional retreat. You aren't setting a boundary. You're just like unplugging the router because you are terrified of catching a malware virus.
Precisely. It is the illusion of control. Opting out of the friction of human relationships isn't empowerment. It is isolation perfectly disguised as strength.
Well, if shutting off the Wi-Fi virtually guarantees a life of isolation, why are millions of people buying into this?
It's a great question.
We have to talk about user acquisition. Like, how does this toxic self-help machinery actually capture its audience? Because I refuse to believe people actively wake up and search for how to become an emotionally unavailable fortress.
Right. Nobody types that into a search bar.
Exactly. This content finds us, usually around 2 a.m. when we are at our absolute lowest.
Well, let's look at the exact neurochemical mechanics of that 2 a.m. scroll.
Let's do it.
You're lying in bed, maybe feeling a profound sense of isolation. Your brain is desperately craving a dopamine hit of connection, but your cortisol, your stress hormone, is highly elevated.
Because humans are biologically hardwired to feel physically unsafe when separated from the tribe.
Exactly. The algorithm detects this late-night dwell time on melancholic or relationship-focused content. It knows your defenses are down. So it serves up a highly potent, optimized cocktail.
And what's the formula?
The formula is universal. Anger plus victimhood plus simple solutions equals massive engagement.
Wow. It's a brilliant, if entirely evil, user retention strategy.
It really is.
When you are feeling lonely and unlovable, anger feels incredibly powerful. It temporarily masks the vulnerability. If a slickly produced video pops up and says, it is not your fault you are sitting there alone, it's because the other gender is entirely corrupt, manipulative, and trying to extract your resources, that feels like a warm blanket in the moment.
It does. It completely externalizes the pain.
Right. It gives you a tangible enemy to fight instead of dealing with your own complex feelings.
And this brings us to the grand illusion of the modern gender war. If you zoom out and look at the macro data trends, both the male-focused content, the red pill, the alpha male boot camps, and the female-focused content, the boss babe, high-value queen seminars, they are running the exact same architectural playbook.
Oh, absolutely.
It is essentially a mirror image.
They really are. Like the male version says, society is rigged against you. Women just want to extract your capital, so you need to become a high-value stoic who doesn't care.
Yeah.
Then the female version says men are irresponsible, they want to trap you and drain your energy, so you need to be fiercely independent, optimize your career, and never rely on a man.
Exactly the same structure.
Both sides are taking the exact same universal human pain and packaging it into opposing team colors just to sell merchandise and subscription courses.
Exactly. But, we can't just blame the algorithm without acknowledging that the underlying pain they are capitalizing on is very, very real. We are navigating a massive structural and cultural transition right now. Women are facing this incredible tearing tension between the deeply ingrained traditional expectation to be cared for and the modern socioeconomic mandate to be entirely independent and fiercely self-sufficient.
And men are caught in an equally confusing paradox. They are facing the immense pressure to provide and protect like traditional Stoic pillars, while simultaneously being told by modern culture that they need to be intensely vulnerable and emotionally available.
Right.
But if they are too vulnerable, they get categorized as weak or toxic. It's basically a a deliberately gender-polarized exploitation of our modern loneliness.
That slip of the tongue was actually incredibly accurate. It is a gender-polarized exploitation of a completely gender-neutral problem.
Well, yeah.
If we dig down to the root cause of why this machinery works so effectively, we have to look at how our physical society is structured today. We are living through unprecedented, hyper-individualized urbanization. The multi-generational households, the tight-knit neighborhood associations, the religious or secular community centers, those foundational safety nets have largely broken down. We've lost our physical third spaces.
And then we added social media to the mix.
Right, which simulates the illusion of connection while actually stripping away the friction of real intimacy. And what you get is a massive society-wide spike in desperation.
Desperation is a really heavy word, but it fits perfectly. When you don't have a village, finding a romantic partner stops being about sharing a life and starts feeling like a life or death survival imperative.
Exactly.
You are desperate to secure a connection because the alternative is complete, terrifying isolation in a tiny apartment. Content creators know this. They weaponize this desperation.
They absolutely do.
They convince you that you are fundamentally unsafe, and then conveniently they offer you a $500 sauce-style course or an exclusive Discord community to make you feel safe again.
It is creating the disease to sell the cure. And the cure they sell is just more armor, more firewalls, which ultimately makes you even more isolated. It is a brilliant, self-perpetuating business cycle.
So how do we actually debug this operating system?
Right.
If we strip away the alpha and queen labels and we delete the algorithmic gender war, what is actually underneath all this anxiety?
Basic human architecture. And you really can't talk about human psychological architecture without bringing in Abraham Maslow.
Oh, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy, you start with the physiological basics, food, water, then you move up to safety. But right above that is the tier of love and belonging.
Right.
Above that is esteem, and finally self-actualization. What the modern world has done is essentially kick the legs out from under that love and belonging tier.
Wow.
What's fascinating is that things like respect, recognition, boundaries, and autonomy, these sit squarely in the esteem and belonging tiers. They are not male traits. They are not female traits.
Right, they're universal.
And they certainly aren't exclusive VIP perks that you only unlock if you successfully manipulate a romantic partner. They are foundational human requirements.
Everyone requires them just to function, regardless of what a guy holding a cigar on YouTube is telling you.
Exactly.
The toxic self-help industry tries to convince you that respect is a rare commodity. You win by dominating a social interaction. But in healthy psychology, mutual respect isn't the prize. It's the baseline entry fee for the interaction to even occur.
Which brings us to a concept psychologists call the internal locus of validation.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The internet gurus are always preaching about being non-needy, but They frame it as a behavioral performance. They tell you to act cold, be aloof, intentionally wait 3 hours to text back.
Right.
That is fake non-neediness. True non-neediness isn't about being indifferent or callous to other people. It is about profound inner abundance. It means your internal locus of validation is so thoroughly solid that you can comfortably sit completely alone in a room without feeling like the walls are closing in.
I mean, when you have that internal stability, your judgment clears up immensely. You no longer hand the remote control of your emotional state over to a stranger's response times.
Exactly.
Because let's be real, if someone else holds that remote control, they can switch your channel from ecstatically happy to devastated with a single thoughtless action.
Exactly. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we successfully eliminate all this desperation and we completely sever our need for external validation, if we become these entirely self-sufficient, internally validated monoliths, don't we just become isolated islands again? Is that a relationship, or is it just a heavily armed ceasefire?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question. And the answer is no, we definitely don't become isolated islands. Because a healthy dynamic isn't a corporate merger where two companies dissolve into one codependent blob, losing all individual operational identity.
Right.
And it's definitely not completely separate islands aggressively shouting their boundaries at each other across the ocean. It's a joint venture. It is a Venn diagram.
A Venn diagram.
Yeah. Picture it visually.
Yeah.
You have two distinct, whole, structurally sound circles. They actively choose to intersect. You maintain your own clear boundaries, your own independent operational area of the circle, but you share a beautiful, deeply collaborative, overlapping space in the middle.
A Venn diagram. That is a brilliant visual mechanism. It honors the absolute integrity of the individual while simultaneously celebrating the shared connection. You aren't sacrificing your architecture to be with someone.
Right. You are complete on your own, but you are intentionally choosing to share your completeness. Listening to all this, it just clicked for me. The real danger here isn't just that the internet gives highly questionable dating advice.
What is it?
The real danger is the massive cognitive dissonance it forces upon us.
Oh, interesting. Unpack that a bit. How is the cognitive dissonance manifesting?
Well, think about the sheer grueling exhaustion of trying to live up to the alpha or high-value queen labels 24 hours a day. It is an unrelenting theatrical performance. You are constantly monitoring your own back-end analytics. Like, did I sound too eager in that voice note? Did I accidentally show too much interest? Am I sufficiently projecting high market value?
Yeah, you're constantly running the numbers.
Right. It forces people to constantly perform a manufactured role rather than simply acting on their core authentic values.
Oh.
We are essentially running a heavy background app of invulnerability that drains our emotional battery to zero.
Wow.
And when your daily actions don't align with your true internal need for connection, your brain experiences severe cognitive dissonance.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The background app of invulnerability is completely draining your system. It burns people out. It is the exact reason why everyone claims they have dating fatigue.
Yes, exactly.
They aren't actually tired of meeting new human beings. They are exhausted by the relentless, hypervigilant theatrical performance of pretending they don't need anyone.
Which brings us to the ultimate actionable takeaway for everyone listening today. You have to force quit that background app.
Absolutely.
You have to actively stop letting the algorithm dictate your internal market value. When you genuinely know who you are, when you have those real boundaries, meaning fences with operational gates, not rigid firewalls, your companionship becomes incredibly high quality.
Because you're making a conscious choice.
Right. Because you are staying in the relationship out of a joyful choice, not out of a desperate, terrified need to be validated or a fear of dying alone.
That is the ultimate pivot point right there. Moving your entire relational operating system from a desperation-based architecture to a choice-based architecture, it literally changes everything about how you interact with the world.
So let's synthesize all of this and bring it home. Escaping this algorithmic information cocoon of revenge narratives and toxic self-help ultimately means finding the raw courage to be vulnerable again.
It does. True strength isn't building a firewall so thick that no one can ever ping your server or hurt you. True strength is having the profound resilience to love openly, knowing full well that even if the relationship crashes, even if you do experience deep pain, you will not lose your core operational self.
We will recover.
You will. That is what actually makes you unmanipulatable. Not a cold lack of feeling, but an unshakable trust in your own capacity to heal.
That is so beautifully said. And before we wrap, I want to emphasize our core tenet here: independent critical thinking. Today's objective exploration wasn't about pointing fingers at any specific group, gender, or demographic.
Right, definitely not.
We're impartially observing an international, structural, social phenomenon, this algorithmic push toward absolute isolation, so that we can all navigate our realities with a bit more clarity. We want to empower you to see the matrix of these online narratives so you can consciously step outside of it.
Absolutely. The goal here is clarity and understanding, never blame.
Exactly. So I want to leave you all with a final provocative thought to chew on today. Instead of reading yet another heavily optimized guide on how to win a psychological Cold War against a potential partner, what if you just gave that hardworking, boundary-needing version of yourself the exact respect, grace, and validation you've been so desperately seeking from the open market? What if the absolute highest value thing you could do today is just drop the armor and breathe?
Now, that is a truly powerful thought to carry with you into the rest of your week. And on that note, we enthusiastically remind you to subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you get your audio. Hit that button so you don't miss our next deep conversation.
Yes, please do. And do not forget to check out our good friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, for his absolute latest travel vlogs. He's a guy who really knows how to live fully outside the algorithm, exploring the real, tangible world.
It is fantastic content. Highly recommend giving his channel a watch. Thank you all for spending your time with us today.
Stay vulnerable, stay incredibly strong, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.